for PEO Soldier, PEO Combat Support, and Combat Service Support, and PEO Aviation. He was appointed as the PEO Enterprise Information Systems PEO in May of 2020. So ladies and gentlemen, would you join me in giving a warm welcome for Mr. Ross Gookert.
Good morning. Hey, great to be here 2 years in a row. I guess we did something good last year to get the invite this year. A lot of things happening in our portfolio with the unified network. A lot of things on the horizon. Look forward to talking about that. You heard about the action verbs this morning, design and develop the unified network, and we're really moving out to get ahead of that. And so anxious to talk to you about that a little bit, but I'm going to be quick so I can turn it over to the important people, my PMs in that panel that you'll hear from after me. Next slide. So you've seen this before. I think it's really important to understand the magnitude of what we do at PEO EIS. I still believe it's the biggest and most complex portfolio in the Army. Our programs support just about every soldier and civilian in the Army, and we ensure that the day-to-day operations run smoothly, and we're improving what we do every day. Some of the things we do. We provide leaders a data platform for readiness, risk, and hundreds of other analytical products and visualization capabilities for the Army. We manage finances for the Army. We manage logistics for the Army. We manage training for the Army. Contracting, talent management, soldier pay, accessions are just a few examples of how the Army does what it does because of our mission at EIS. And certainly not least, we modernize and protect the Army's camps, posts, and stations and the networks on those camps, posts, and stations. And you'll hear more about that on the next panel from my PMs. And we're always improving what we do by integrating and converging, whether it's our ERPs or the unified network, by being innovative in our acquisition strategies and partnering with industry on best practices, welcoming their ideas on how to do better things and more creatively. We welcome your out-of-the-box ideas on those engagements that we have with you every day throughout the year. Next slide. So quickly, I want to talk about a few changes we made in key leadership positions in EIS. In the front office, at the top of the chart, Colonel Rob Wolf has stepped in as the acting deputy PEO. He was formerly the PM for RDAP. Ms. Jen Potts has stepped in as the acting PM for RDAP while he is serving as the acting deputy PEO. John Howe was selected as the chief of staff, a great talent in the organization. As you recall, he was previously the APEO for network, cyber, and services. And for that role, Pat McKinney has stepped in from ASALT on a developmental assignment, and he's hitting the ground running. We're fortunate to have Pat on board. Mr. Lee James, who's here with us today, was selected as the assistant PEO for the business mission area. Key leadership position filled by one of our best leaders in EIS. So he left the PD for enterprise services vacant, and once again, Sergio Alvarez has stepped up, also a great resource in our portfolio. In PM RDAP, we welcomed Lieutenant Colonel L.J. Freeland to take over not just the Vantage program, but we moved the ASIP Hub program under her as well, a great addition to our family. And at PL GFIM, we welcomed Richard Eva as the new product lead. Moving to the right, at PM DIBS, Kevin Curry has replaced Colonel Don Burton. I'm sure many of you know Colonel Burton. Thanks to Don for his many years of service at EIS, always be a family member here. Also in that portfolio, we welcomed Keith Baylor as the product lead for Army Ignited, a program we recently inherited and are pushing out that first minimum viable product later this month. So a great success story there. We welcomed Rob Porter as the new acting product director for GFEBS, and this week we'll welcome Eric Scott as the product manager for G-Army. At Army Human Resource Systems, Mr. Wayne Sock has stepped up as the acting product director as part of a one-year broadening assignment. Finally, under IPSA, Colonel Rob Williams will be retiring later this year after an illustrious career, 4 years as the PM for IPSA. We're excited to push out the new release later this year, due in no small part to Rob's leadership, and looking forward to making the remarks at his retirement ceremony later this year. So I think that's all the highlights, and just a reminder, you can find this on our webpage if you need to download it. Next slide. So last year I talked about changing your thoughts to change the world. And now our Army is changing, transforming, and modernizing because of visionaries like Lieutenant General Morrison, Dr. Iyer, Lieutenant General Barrett, Major General Stanton, and others. They're changing the way we think about the network. Before, we modernized the enterprise network in piecemeal, without a strategy, annual priorities that changed, and didn't align with an approach to optimize how we support NDO and the warfighter. Now, we have a plan and a strategy, and we're getting decisions in an investment strategy that deliver a unified capability that ensures soldiers have access to the data they need to ensure decision dominance. The vision is a single, coherent, secure end-to-end network from the tactical to the enterprise, ensuring data centricity and responsiveness to the leaders. It starts with an operational framework and lines of effort under the Army's Unified Network Plan. It's complemented by the Army's Cloud Plan and Data Xord. And integrated requirements now reflect that operational framework, enabling commonality and efficiencies across the material developers who deliver the network. It's securing the funding and putting innovative acquisition strategies in place to deliver the capability in rapid fashion, in a sustainment strategy where we're always modernizing. And we can't do it without our industry partners. We are well on our way in Phase 1, setting the network, and in particular, LOE 1, establishing the unified network. Next chart. So I don't want to steal too much of the PM's thunder on the next board, but this framework allows us at EIS to set the conditions to modernize and protect the enterprise network. It's not possible without the leadership I talked about earlier. The G6 and the CIO are leading the ongoing capability portfolio reviews, getting key decisions from Army leadership on transport, common services infrastructure, common operating environment, DODIN operations, and the enterprise data center strategy. At EIS, we are moving out with global SIPR modernization to include commercial solutions for classified, followed by VDI and multiple independent levels of security. The intent is to modernize the NIPR and SIPR nets into one gray network, which will provide soldiers with unified capability to include disconnected environments. PM Global Enterprise Network Modernization Americas, or GENMA, hosted a SIPR modernization industry day for our industry partners to gather information for future solicitations to communicate program requirements, scope, and schedule. So anticipate to see that solicitation on the street in the very near future. We started voice modernization to replace a majority of hard clients as TDM infrastructure becomes decommissioned in FY25. Specifically, we're helping to reduce the Army's overall phone count, regionalizing existing voice over IP capabilities and implementing a regional modernization approach. And we anticipate that solicitation, Voice Modernization 2.0, to be released later this year. And we're moving out with ICAM, Identity, Credential, and Access Management, executing the G6's roadmap while we await RDP, Requirements Definition Package from the UNO ICD. We're working closely with PEO C3T, the Cyber Center of Excellence, and other partners to shape that RDP for a comprehensive ICAM solution based on a managed service model. That will be a large-scale acquisition for us. We're also modernizing the NIPRNet with greater capacity circuits overlaid with zero trust principles and experimenting with Wi-Fi and 5G. So a lot of progress since we last met, and we continue to position ourselves to move as fast as the strategy and resourcing will allow. Next chart. Something I want to highlight with our Defensive Cyber Operations PM that's really a model not just for the Army but for DoD. As we look to be innovative in big A acquisition, we're fortunate if we're successful in one or even two aspects of requirements, resourcing, and acquisition. But in the case of DCO, they hit a home run in all three, or a hat trick for you hockey fans. They are the pathfinders for DoD, single-handedly changing the face of rapid acquisition. And if you think about it, if any PM needs to be rapid against a cyber threat, it's the Defensive Cyber Operations PM. The first leg of the stool is requirements. They are following an IT box construct championed by the Cyber Center of Excellence that allows DCO to break down requirements into smaller packages, pushing the decision-making down to the lowest levels possible, allowing for more rapid acquisition. The next leg is funding. DCO is the only Army organization participating in the DoD Software and Technology Budget Activity 8, or BA8 pilot, which focuses on simplifying programming and budgeting for rapidly changing efforts using an agile development model. The pilot enables the PM to use one appropriation type for RDT&E, OPA, and OMA. A huge flexibility when we can't predict 2 years out what cyber tools we'll invest in and what phase of the life cycle they'll be in. And finally, the final leg is acquisition, how we contract for our efforts. DCO is using multiple contracting vehicles to include other transaction authorities and FAR-based vehicles, depending on the circumstances and even in conjunction with each other. We frequently use OTA agreements to prototype solutions before moving into a solidified contract using the FAR. This allows us to move out quickly to prototype solutions once new threats are discovered and stay ahead of them as much as possible. So this hat trick, if you will, is being praised by Army leaders, and I think you'll see a lot of this model in the implementation of the UNO ICD as well. Next chart. So I'm sure I don't have to tell you, but data centricity is where the Army is driving to. Honorable Warmoth made that clear earlier this year, but we have been ahead of the game, as you know, by reorganizing within the PEO around data. PM Army Data and Analytics Platform, or PM RDAP, was stood up shortly after I arrived to use authoritative sources and analytics to drive decisions, understand risk and readiness, establish efficiencies, allow users to create their own visualizations with the data, and set conditions for a future ERP convergence architecture that centers on data. Vantage has over 45,000 users, over 30,000 unique data sets, over 40,000 analytical products, and 3,000 of those were developed by the users themselves. Vantage served as a tool for the Joint Chiefs to manage the Afghan withdrawal. It provided COVID maps for commanders and vaccination status. It provided automated means to track weapons inventory. It identified unliquidated obligations in time to put billions back into the Army coffers that we wouldn't have otherwise. And most recently, the Chief Data Officer for the 18th Airborne Corps described Army Vantage as a game changer as they modernized for their deployments by automating equipment in transit and eliminating hundreds of hours of manual labor. So moving forward, the Army is drafting the data fabric, our data mesh architecture, from the tactical to the enterprise. We welcome industry's input on how best to do that. There's a number of different solutions being piloted at the tactical edge, and we have Gabriel, Nimbus, and Vantage as key components at the enterprise. But we await that final architecture and data fabric requirement from the UNO ICD to understand how we will implement a true data fabric across the Army in the future. Again, we welcome industry's input on how we can do that. Finally, I encourage everyone to be familiar with the Army strategic documents that make data centricity an imperative. The Army Data Plan, the Army Cloud Plan, the Army Digital Transformation Strategy, and the Army Unified Network Plan. These documents drive a lot of my mission and the Army's investments. Next chart. So I'm going to take questions, but before I do want to say thank you to AFCEA, International, General Lawrence, and the rest of the team have been fantastic hosts here. This is a great venue for us to engage with our industry partners, exchange information, learn new things that you guys are doing, and how that fits into our acquisition strategies. I want to thank my StratComs team, Susan, Tara, and the rest of the team. Always hit a home run when we do these events, so thanks to you guys. With that, open it up to some questions.
Yeah, you push the green button use your thumb, push the button. When you see get a green light, green means go, red means stop. You got green?
It's optional, Roger. Can you hear me?
You got
sir?
green? Go.
All right, sir, can you hear me? Not at all.
I can, but not on the mic.
How about now? There we are.
There you go.
All right. Good morning, sir. Thank you very much for your time. My name is Lieutenant Colonel Craig Head, Cyber Protection Brigade. I have a question for you about delivering capabilities. As all the services stand up their own software developers and work to push those through a process, an RMF process, to get them put onto networks across Doden, how are you or your team reaching across the different services to make sure there's some kind of reciprocity to use like capabilities across networks so that we don't duplicate development and or procurement? Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's a good question. And ever since I have got on board, I do a quarterly session with my counterpart PEOs in the other services. And there's a lot of things that have already manifested from that. If you're familiar with Army Contract Writing System, we're all converging now on a single platform. Whereas before we were doing stovepipe investments, so there weren't efficiencies created. So now we can cost share. PEO X can do this capability, PEO Y can do this capability, and they bring it into our Army instance, and we use their capability, so we don't have to pay a software developer to develop the same thing. So that collaboration has worked very well across my counterparts, my other PEOs in the other services. If that answers your question.
It totally does. Thank you, sir.
Thanks for the question. Saving all the questions for the panel, I see, which is good. Any other questions? Okay. Mike, turn it over back to you. Thank you. Okay.
All right, thank you, Mr. Cookert. Truly appreciate those remarks and setting the tone and the stage. I love the home run analogy. I grew up playing baseball, and I hit a few home runs, so I can relate to that. But for those hockey players, you can get your hat tricks as well. So thank you for taking the time to join in us today with your insightful remarks. And in lieu of a speaker gift, we, AFC International, will make a donation to the Fort Gordon Historical Museum Society. Now we're going to jump right into the next session. We're a few minutes early, but we've got a full audience. The panel is all here, as well as the moderator. So we're going to jump into the next session that will be led by Mr. Lee James, the Assistant Program Executive Officer in the Business Mission Area. And at this time, I'll go ahead and invite the panelists and the moderator to the stage. Let me give a quick introduction to Mr. Lee James, who will introduce his panelists. Lee James has served in numerous leadership roles in the PEO EIS and most recently served as the project director for the enterprise services. In his current role, he is responsible for overseeing 3 project management offices encompassing the Army's data, finance, and accounting, and human capital and logistics programs. So without further ado, please join me in giving a warm welcome to Mr. Lee James.
Michael. All right. Thank you, Mike. That's a heck of an introduction. Can everybody hear me okay? All right. So it's, what time is it? I have 10:55. Already we've heard from Lila in one of the best renditions I've ever heard of our national anthem. We've heard from General Retired Lawrence. We've heard from General Stanton, General Gervais, General Eubank, Mr. Guckert, and heck, we even heard from the mayor, Mayor Davis, the mayor of this great city of Augusta, the home of James Brown, the godfather of soul. And so, hey, with that said, I'm only going to say this once. TechNet, AFCEA TechNet, Augusta 2022, good morning. Good morning. All right. We have a lively audience here. With that lineup, if that lineup doesn't get your blood pumping, then you might want to check your profession. So heck of a lineup this morning. No pressure, gentlemen. So hey, it's great to see so many familiar faces. My name is Lee James, as the boss mentioned, and Mike as well. Recently assumed a new role here as the assistant PEO for EIS for the business mission area. And today I'll be your moderator for this PM panel. So just real quick, by show of hands, how many know of Mr. John Howe? Okay, most people know John Howe. So John usually does this particular panel. In fact, John's spearheaded this panel for the last 2 or 3 years, and he's been a mainstay in this space and at this event. So, hey, I know this is a change. I understand. John's got a laser-like focus. He's got a pretty deep, distinguished voice. Kind of reminds me of a late-night radio disc jockey sometimes. And he's got a suit. Nobody knows what color it is, but clearly mine isn't that color. But anyway, you're going to get my best John Howe impersonation here this morning. So, hey, I'm really glad to be here. I've been a part of this event for previous years, and I have a tremendous amount of appreciation for the immense value that these sessions bring. Virtual's okay, but nothing beats good old-fashioned face-to-face contact. So look forward to an informed discussion, continued dialogue, some good questions from you. We have these 3 gentlemen here who need no introduction. Mr. Sergio Alvarez, the Acting Project Director for Enterprise Services, who is spearheading the modernization of our enterprise service tool set. We have Colonel Jay Shell, the Project Manager for Integrated Enterprise Network, who's leading the charge for our network modernizations. And then last and certainly not least, we have Colonel Mark Taylor, who's the model for agile delivery of capability across the Army. So here's how this is going to work. So I'm going to turn it over to each PM, and they're going to give you their, starting with Serge, and he'll give you a 10-minute overview of enterprise services. Then we'll follow that same model with Colonel Shell, and Jay will give you 5 minutes. I know that means 15 for you if we're lucky, but hey. And then we'll do the same thing for Colonel Taylor. And then I'll ask a question. So I was told I get to ask a question after each. So I was told to throw a few softballs. So hey, I can't make any promises. I'll do my best. So each is going to focus on their team, their priorities, their strategic initiatives, and things of interest to you all, our industry partners. I have one ask before we get started. So a couple of efforts that are in contracting already. So Army Enterprise Service Management Platform, we ask that we're not going to talk about that. That's currently in source selection. There's probably a couple other topics that I know Mr. Guckert mentioned that folks want to talk about. Probably not suitable for this particular panel. Hey, the theme here is unified network. So we want to take advantage of this collection of talent and these 3 leaders. It's not often that we have these 3 leaders in the same room at the same time. So let's take advantage of that. So without further ado, let's get to it. Serge, over to you.
Hey, thanks, sir. Appreciate that. Good morning, everyone. Glad to see everybody here. So enterprise services consist of 6 product offices that provides a wide range of services to the Army and DoD. I'm going to focus on 3 because I want to give time for Jay. We agreed up front that he needs more time than I do. So, hey.
Serge, your timer's on right here, in case you didn't know.
Okay. So first, I'd like to introduce a couple of folks. So Mr. Boyd Williams, he's our product lead for Altez. Boyd, if you don't mind standing up. Doing a lot of great work down in Radford, Virginia, and we'll get into some of those things. Also like to introduce Captain Mark Rodriguez. He goes by Captain Rod. He's our Army ICAM lead. Been doing a lot of great things with the Army ICAM services and a lot of collaboration with teammates across the CIO, G6, C3T, our cyber, just the full gamut. So really doing a lot of great work there. Also would like to introduce Ms. Stacy Watson. She's not here. She's at her booth. She's running chess. So if you get an opportunity to get down there and see her, they're doing a lot of great things with the enterprise license agreements. Everybody knows about ITES and the other capabilities that are going on within chess. So take a moment to get down there and see her. So we'll go ahead and go to the next slide. So our priorities within enterprise services is really focused on the capabilities that are key enablers of the Army digital transformation and the unified network plan. We're going to focus on enterprise identity management, the Army enterprise data centers, and our managed service provider capabilities and cloud management services. So between the 3 PMs that we have that are represented here, they will all be critical key members in making sure that that happens across the Army and how we get there in establishing the network, unified network. Altes is going to focus on their application service provider capabilities, taking applications and moving them into the cloud, as well as working with Netcom on the Army Enterprise Data Center construct and the plans to enable those data centers to be consistent across the enterprise and narrowing that field down to how we're going to do that. He'll also be doing the modernization of Army applications that will be transitioning to the cloud. And we look forward to how we enable all these applications, business applications and what have you, that are going to be transitioning to the cloud, and how Boyd's team will help enable that, working with the Enterprise Cloud Management Agency. So focusing on EC2M, big mission. Obviously, they're running the Army ICAM for, and really working on establishing the strategic Army ICAM solution, which will include the multi-factor authentication, Army Master Identity, the privilege access management, and continuing our partnership with C3T on our enable strategic or tactical to strategic, as well as taking our AMID users to the tactical edge and our non-person entities up to the strategic edge. So Captain Rod's really leading the charge on that, and I encourage everyone to talk with him and I about how we're going to be able to do that for the Army. And we're really looking to get your help on how we can enable that moving forward. From a chess perspective, we'll continue to be the mandatory source and for software and services. Stacy and her team have been doing a tremendous job in working with industry and establishing that, as well as our senior leaders, on how we get these agreements out and ready to use for the Army to enable capabilities across the enterprise. And finally, I'll just focus that our strategic initiatives are really looking at ICAM for the Army, the identity as a service, and then how we do managed service provider and application service provider for the Army as a whole. So with that, I will pass it.
So before you go, Jay, I have a question for Sergio. Okay, so we hear a lot about ICAM, and you and I both know that's a pretty broad topic. So I'm going to let's narrow the focus to privileged access management for now. So you mentioned a few things in your chat there, Serge. Training, clearance data, dynamic access control for tactical systems, and identity as a service. So question is, given the emphasis on cybersecurity, what do you see as the challenges for implementing privileged access management across the Army?
Yeah, thanks, Lee. So privilege access management, so what does that really mean, right? So I look at it from access control to role-based control, and how we leverage that across the enterprise for all of the applications within the Army and how they do that. So our challenge is that not every system is exactly the same, and not everybody has the same roles across their applications that are on the network. And so what we need to focus on is how do we standardize those attributes to enable the necessary access that users, privileged users, need, not only on the back end from the administration of the services, but roles, whether it's financial or what have you, that have to execute their applications and be auditable on how they do that. So those capabilities is really the challenge that we're looking at, and really teaming with not only the application owners, focusing first on financial systems, but also with our CIO partners on how we identify and change some of the enterprise attributes to be able to enable a role-based, access-based type privilege access management solution.
Thanks. Over to you, Jay.
4 minutes extra for me. Thanks, Serge. I appreciate that. Colonel Jay Shell, PM, Integrated Enterprise Networks. Thanks for having us today. Forums like this are extremely powerful. When I was assigned to this job, I was wondering what the Army was doing, assigning a tanker to help run one of the largest network programs in the Army. What I realized pretty shortly after being assigned is it's just like every other program. And in every other program and in every other environment, change is the only constant. And so what we've realized is change is good. And we've changed our programs in accordance with the Army's senior leaders' guidance. We've changed our name to better articulate what we do. We were PM DCATs, now we're PM Integrated Enterprise Networks. We've changed many of our O5s, or will change many of our O5s names. From left to right on this chart, Global Enterprise Network Modernization Americas, led by Lieutenant Colonel Koshan Arnold, is down here in the front. Formerly PM I3MP. I3MP is still a funding line, no longer a program. Global Enterprise Network Modernization OCONUS, led by Mr. Tom Dunaway, down here in the front right as well, your front right. Again, changed his name to better articulate what they do. The GENMs deliver a unified standards-based network globally in accordance with the Army Unified Network Plan, the cloud plan, the data plan, all the plans that we've talked about. Also, wideband enterprise satellites, that's in the middle. That's led by Lieutenant Colonel Scott Davis. He's not here today. There's a bunch of complexity there with the establishment of Space Force. If you read the MRD this past week about some assets transferring to the Space Force, he still right now is the arm for modernization and sustainment as a lifecycle manager for the wideband base stations. There's talk about some of those assets transferring in 24, but right now it's still Scott Davis and his team. And as the Army works that out at the strategic level, we'll keep you guys informed as to where the opportunities lie. He's the only one not changing. And then on the very right, you see PM Land Mobile Radio. There is a new Army requirement called Base Emergency Communications. Mr. E.J. Waskowski is still in lead of that organization, but he will be the PM for all base emergency communications. Computer-aided dispatch continue to be the LMR, which they currently field. And then, of course, first responder broadband network, FirstNet, the integration of that into our emergency services, next generation 911 as well. These meetings are really important because the synergy between industry and our shops are essential to our collective success. The government guys and the industry guys, there's no dividing line. We are one. We are one industrial base. We are one group of patriots that deliver capability to our bases or to our formations. And so your success is our success and vice versa. Having a well-informed group of industry partners that know where we're going, that know what we're doing, where we can telegraph and sing signals is absolutely essential for our success. And so as we walk around this week, I look forward to engaging each of you. It's also useful to understand the synergy between the three of us at this table, because this group of auspicious professionals that are acquisition experts, we all work together on a daily basis. And you hear a lot of buzzwords, you hear a lot of action verbs, see a lot of plans, right? There's the Army Unified Network Plan, there's the Unified Network Operations, there's the data plan, there's the cloud plan. What does it all mean? I don't know what it means. And so I had to draw a chart. And so being a dumb tanker, it was a really simple chart. It had 3 circles. There was 1 circle for me, 1 circle for Serge, and 1 circle for Mark. And in those circles were all the plans and requirement documents. And just so while we're walking around, where you fit into who you're talking to, because it's important to know who you're talking to and why you're talking to them. If you're going to sell hardware on the Army network, I'm your guy. If you have a box or a circuit or something that we can lick and smell and touch and feel and cuddle, sell it to me. If you're going to sell ones and zeros, that's the unified network operations, UNO, things that are ephemeral, things you can't touch, smell, licks, or cuddle, sell it to Surge. Because I don't want to talk about it. Now, it's going to run on my hardware, and we're going to develop some common standards, but don't talk to me about it, because my eyes will roll back. I'm a dumb tanker. I don't understand ones and zeros. Seen the Matrix, that's as far as it goes. Now, there is a special niche carved out for Mark, because he's special. Everybody heard about that, how special Mark is. And that niche crosses both hardware and software, and that's defensive cyber. So Mark will continue to field both hardware and software. Don't think you're going to field it across the Army's network in entirety, because that's Surge or I. But if it says defensive cyber or cyber ops, then that's Mark. Right, Mark?
I wasn't sure how you're going to extend the cuddling analogy to defensive cyber, but it probably wouldn't be good in this forum.
So I'm a tanker. I've done a lot of cuddling in the Army. You're an aviator, so I know you're not into that. But so that's where it goes. So hardware, software, defensive cyber. What all these people on the chart do is they do assured voice, video, data, and mission command from afar, think command and control for the Army's network. We understand we are an enabler for the tactical formation. And so there are akin capabilities within that tactical formation that deploy with, compel our nation's enemy, or kill them that we help them do through assured voice, video, and data on the Army's enterprise network. It is a unified network. It is artificially bifurcated by congressional interests, by funding lines, by PMs with authorities, by AFC's requirement documents. At the end of the day, we realize it is all one network. Now, how your requirement documents and the future initiatives fit into these PM circles is I, in the OPR, or my team is the OPR for enterprise transport modernization and enterprise services infrastructure. That's common store and compute. It just so happens that the smartest people in the Army for store and compute are under Sergio's group, Altest, Mr. Boyd over here, Boyd Williams. And so we wouldn't be able to standardize without their expertise. So the boundaries are perfectly permeable. Of course, over at Surge is coming enterprise computing environment, and he'll own that, and then DCO does all the nifty IT box stuff that they do. And so that's how we figured out how we would divide amongst ourselves. And so that's what we do and where we do it, and it's all nested within that unified network plan. Next slide, please. And so you heard about our main initiatives. We have gotten away from little individual projects, one of 2,770 projects that we could field any random year based on funding. We've gotten away from that and adopted a true lifecycle manager, repeatable, plannable, regular cadence of a program. And so the divisible unit that we'll field to our BOIP is the Army Post. Now, there are some exceptions. One of those exceptions is a high priority. It is laying in the unified network, AUNP, you saw under General Eubank's slide, LOE1, and that's deliver SIPR modernization. We'll field a global SIPRnet. We had an industry day for those of you all who attended. Global SIPRnet across all the continents. We fenced funding for that at the expense of our legacy activities, and we hope to deliver that with your assistance in fiscal year 24, at least phase one of that. Key to that is also life cycling our aging security systems, and then bringing on users in the network with all those new technologies, MILS, VDI, et cetera, to increase the aggregate security posture of the unified network. That is a key task for us. Also, a key task is DISAs and industries no longer supporting our aging telephony network. And so we have to focus on decommissioning those aging infrastructure switchboards that run on copper that DISA will shut off in fiscal year 25. That's critical for life, health, and safety. And so that is our number 1, 2 priority in the PMs, and everything else has essentially fallen to the wayside until we get those 2 things accomplished. We also continue to inform our O&M partners in Netcom what the posture of their network is from an efficacy standpoint based on the life cycle and the age of their equipments and where we would recommend we go field. But to help them O&M, we've been challenged to decrease the aggregate amount of hardware that is fielded on their network. And to that end, when we go and do a telephone modernization activity, we are not going to replace telephones. We're going to bring in Wi-Fi so we can minimize the amount of switches, aggregate switches we have to have on the network. These are things that the O&M costs of the network are things that we haven't necessarily considered as much as we should have. And so we're very much open to any ideas that you have, to, even if it is a greater expense to our PM shops, to decrease the amount of life cycle that the Army would have to dedicate towards what we field. Where you can help. You obviously see us better than we see ourselves across the services, across the Army. You service and have contracts with and are in support of multiple different organizations. We don't necessarily see that. And so I think the real power of a lot of these conversations is the Air Force is doing this, why don't you do that? Or hey, we have a contract over here with this person, why don't you do this? Or we can combine these and we can gain great efficiencies. These are things, whether it's good or bad, within our stovepipes, we just don't see. And so I think that that's one of the biggest things that you can bring to us, is just help knock down the barriers or open up our blinders so that we can best deliver, because we're all patriots in here. You don't do it for the profit. We know that there's a certain amount of saluting the flag that all of us do, no matter what side, no matter whether we're in uniform or wearing a suit here or out there. We're in it all for the right reasons. And so I'm open to any dialogue where we can do it better, or what advice you have for us, or especially across the services, or some best practices. And then lastly, we have some pretty big contract actions in flight. Traditionally, our PALTs have been, are the time it takes for us to get from defining what we want until we get on contract is extraordinarily long. And so we are in the process of a lot of our largest initiatives, seeing what contracting centers can go fastest for us. And so there's not a lot of fidelity about where we're going to go or what contract vehicles we're going to lay into. I just asked you guys to be best postured based on every opportunity out there so that we can deliver as quickly as possible to the warfighter. And that's all I have. I was remiss in mentioning one person, Mr. Network, Bob Carroll. Bob, please raise your hand. A couple people know him. We all work for him, and he can actually read the matrix. And so, Bob, sorry about forgetting you in the beginning, but Bob is responsible for the standardization and the simplification of a lot of the complexity that is our network infrastructure and architecture. And so, thanks, Bob.
All right, thanks, Jay. So, hey, acknowledge and commend your deliberate effort to rebrand, realign, restructure around the Army Unified Network Plan. So, question is, how does IEN's 4 project offices work together to support and enable the Army Unified Network Plan?
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Lee. I think it goes back to the basic capability that each of these 4 PMs provide: voice, video, data, and mission command. And so wideband satellites, they are the dedicated MILSAT. They are the largest pipes that the DoD has to deliver dedicated SATCOM back to, from which they can pull services. Again, Global Enterprise Network Modernization Americas and OCONUS, those deliver a standard network. And then Base Emergency Communications, currently LMR, they ride on the ICANN. They ride on the network within a post. And so where all of these individual PMs are delivering the unified network it is one network. And so where we fit in is if it is within the fence of an installation and it's real property, we are the ones that in theory field it. There's a couple carve-outs and a couple exceptions. There's still a couple org nets. There's a couple things that C3T were doing. But that in essence is the unified network. And we're the only ones doing it. If it doesn't deploy, then it's within our portfolio. And it's our job to help field it in a repeatable, reliable process to the right standards with the common equipment and enable sustainment of that. And Bob and his team are the ones that help write those standards. And so I think that's where we fit into the Army Unified Network Plan. So that no matter where you deploy or where you go, it's the same network, and then the policy and the procedures are what enable reciprocity as forces deploy or you shift between theaters. And then that's the key task for us, making sure the network looks the same everywhere. Thanks, Lee.
Thanks. Over to you, Mark.
All right, good morning. Mark Taylor, PM DCO. Like was said before, it's good to see a lot of familiar faces. Just about a year ago, a lot of you were sitting in the same room, and here we are again. But some of the folks in the green uniforms and in the suits, you're working. Some people are in different companies now. Some people are in different jobs. But we're all working to those same goals that were outlined by a lot of the senior leaders this morning in their opening comments. Some of you may have heard this before when I talked in front of a group like this, but whether we are wearing the green or in working for one of our industry partners or government civilians, I know you all bleed red, white, and blue, and we're all here to defend our nation. So thank you very much for all you do in whatever capacity you're working. With that, let me hit the slide and introduce some of the team within PMDCO. First off, we got Lieutenant Colonel Dakota Steedsman, if you stand up. He leads our cyber analytics and detection product office. Under him, the biggest horse that he's trying to ride is cyber analytics program of record, and that houses the Army's big data platform known as Gabriel Nimbus. All the services have an instance of that along with U.S. Cybercom, and that big data capability is our cyber's -- weapon system for defensive cyber operations. And there's a lot of work continuing on that. The next program there, DCO Mission Planning, that rides on Gabriel Nimbus and provides a mission planning and situational awareness tool. Another one of his big programs is user activity monitoring. That capability is the material solution for the Army's insider threat program, at least on the network side. So a lot of evolution on that program. And then lastly, threat emulation. That capability works as a non-intrusive red teaming like capability that helps our friendly forces find vulnerabilities before our adversaries on the network. The next portfolio is cyber platforms and systems under Lieutenant Colonel Brad Son. If you stand up, wave, where are you at? Oh, you're over there. So, and Brad, he has a couple programs of record under him, including the Deployable DCO Systems Modular, DDSM, and Garrison DCO Platform. Those two hardware software solutions are the main weapon system for our cyber protection teams whenever they deploy on site to conduct their DCO mission or do that mission remotely from home station. Next, we have Dco Tools Suite, and that program of record is where we acquire a lot of those commercial off-the-shelf tools, and with the open source tools where we get a lot of our managed professional services. It was said before that those applications are the ammo that our cyber protection teams use to conduct their mission. Little shout out, we got Andy Fail, who's an APM. Stand up real quick. You might want to see her. That's a very dynamic portfolio, and a lot of the cash that rolls through the program goes through that POR and changes a lot throughout the year. Forensics, malware, and analysis, that capability pretty much what it says, but this capability will allow us to conduct that mission not only locally but remotely. And then counter-infiltration, not an official program or record yet, but more to follow on that one in the coming fiscal year. Next up, we got Applied Cyber Technologies, led by Mr. Art Edgison. If you stand up real quick, there he is. Thanks, Art. Art leads up the Forge and Armory concept within DCO. The Forge is the Innovation and Integration Center for PM DCO and houses our DevSecOps pipeline. Within the Forge, we do a lot of those integration and cybersecurity tasks that are essential to provide an integrated and secure solution or capability to cyber protection teams. Once we have that integrated solution, we put that in the armory. We have two armories, one at Fort Gordon, one at Fort Belvoir, that serve all three components of active guard and reserve. And I guess the analogy of that armory similar to an arms room in an infantry battalion that holds all the M4s and crew-served weapons. Same thing with the DCO armories. We keep the DDSMs and the latest updated software upload there, and it serves as a one-stop shop for cyber protection teams to check in and out equipment, whether they're going on mission or doing training. So there's two other product offices within DCO, and won't talk much more about them, just the introduction here, we have Allied Information Technologies under Mr. Ryan Greeny, just took over. That serves as the foreign military sales component of PEO EIS. Unlike other PEOs that sell a lot of the products that are developed within the PEO, this office takes the tailored requirements from a lot of our allied partners and develops those solutions and puts them in to meet their requirements, building their capacity. So whenever that balloon goes up, there's more capacity, then ultimately leads for less American blood being shed. And then lastly, we got Technology Applications Office, led by Mr. John Schwartz, not here today. That is a classified contracting and office and sensitive activity. They are responsible for fielding and sustaining right now the Army Special Access Program Enterprise Portal. And then they also do a lot of IT and cyber acquisitions for a lot of special customers. Okay, with that, we'll go to the next slide. Just a couple of priorities we're working quickly. On the top left, we're on Gabriel Nimbus, that Army's big data platform. We're looking to operationalize that capability across all three security networks, NIPR, SIPR, and JWICS, making good strides there. We're looking to field the next generation of deployable capabilities, that DDSM and Garrison Defense Platform. We'll talk a little bit more about that. The forensics and malware and threat emulation, we're going to be deploying those capabilities here in the next fiscal year. They're ready to go, and we'll be rolling them out. DCO Tools, we'll be fielding version 5 of that. There's a lot of contract actions across the year. It's not one set purchase, so keep your eyes out for that. We'll continue to monitorize within the Forge and Armory our DevSecOps pipeline, remaining aligned with Army Cyber Command's vision and U.S. Cyber Command's vision getting integrated with the joint development environment. User activity monitoring. Right now, we're fielded on SIPR and JWIX, and we're going to move from on-prem solutions to the cloud, and then working to transition to the next generation of user activity monitoring. There's also an unclassified NIPR requirement coming out in the near future, so we'll be keeping our eye on that. Then lastly, we'll be doing a transition of our Dco Mission Planning capability, or DCOMP, to Unified Platforms Joint Command and Control, JCC2 capability, so rolling that into the joint solution. We'll keep some of the Army-specific capabilities within our cyber analytics program, but that's where we're heading there. Real quickly, the strategic initiatives. The first one, Mr. Guckert touched on it in his remarks, our DCO IT box. It was a 5-year IT box that governed fiscal year 18 to 22. That is coming to a close next month. We're in the process of going through the approval for the next 5-year IT box that will cover 23 to 27. Just provides us a lot of flexibility, and that requirement framework is able to evolve across those 5 years. U.S. Cybercom, back in FY21, the National Defense Authorization Act tried to increase unity of effort in the cyber domain under U.S. Cybercom, and with successive NDAAs after that, continued to provide more guidance. So we're going to be working closely with U.S. Cybercom. It'll become clear in President's Budget 24. Some pieces of that unity of effort will move to U.S. Cybercom, but there is a lot of Army retained cyber capability that we will continue to acquire for. We'll continue to support unified network operations in the Army Unified Network Plan. And then lastly, Mr. Guckert touched on it again, the Budget Activity 8 Software and Digital Technology Pilot, BA8 for short. It's a very responsive and flexible appropriation that we're using, and we'll continue to use that in FY23. It just allows us to adjust as required as we move through a highly dynamic acquisition process in the cyber domain. Okay, just our upcoming business opportunities there in the bottom right. Looking next generation garrison defense platforms, evolving that capability. DDSM, deployable DCO systems module, looking for the next version of that. Continued procurement of DCO tools, licensing, and managed professional services, and ultimately Gabriel Nimbus, looking at sometime in the next year or so to make that a competitive acquisition. With that, pass it over to you.
Hey, thanks, Mark. So recognize that you're special, and a lot of what you do, your program does, can't be discussed in open forums. Nevertheless, security and survivability are a line of effort in the unified network operations effort. So given that, what role does DCO play in that unified network operations effort?
Yeah, just briefly, I'll touch on it, and glad that slide's still up there. Under Unified Network Operations, it got two sub-bullets there. SIEM, so Security Information and Event Management. General Eubank touched on that during his remarks today. We're looking to unify that SIEM solution across the network, both enterprise and tactical. So working closely with NetCom, our Cyber Technical Warfare Center, and NetCom and our brothers in PEO C3T to field a multi-phase solution, ultimately becoming that unified SIEM, and it will support cybersecurity and defensive cyber operations. And then lastly, under Unified Network Operations and in that IT box, you'll see there's an RDP or requirements definition package that touching on data fabric. So we're using our lower echelon analytic platform capability, which is the software baseline, what we use in the Gabriel Nimbus, the big data platform. We're able to put that software baseline on different hardwares throughout different parts of the network, both enterprise and tactical, to align a lot of the how that data is managed so that they have a common data fabric across the enterprise and tactical networks. Those are the two main contributions that we're doing right now. But DCO is going to be an overlay as the network continues to develop. Our DCO techniques, tactics, and procedures, and the hardware and software solutions that we use to conduct that mission will continue to evolve.
All right, thank you. So now it's time for audience questions. So we're going to open this up. Only one ground rule. Let's raise your hands, and when we select you, please use the microphone. If you're having problems, I think we have a couple of mics floating around. We prefer you use the microphone because we are recording this and streaming. So with that, hey, we look forward to your questions. So let's ask away.
Ted, gotta eat the mic, I guess. Can you hear me okay?
Time's up.
Eat the microphone, okay.
Gotta be
Ted
quick.
Cummings with MuleSoft. A lot of talk about data fabric. I hear the same thing from PEO C3T. And I know that there's initiatives within ECMA and the Data Services Division, specifically their CData platform and their CData environment. Are the three of those major groups collaborating with each other and talking to each other about those initiatives? Over.
Yeah, they're all C3T, ECMA, and PEOAS. We were in all the network summits where that requirement document is being developed over the next couple months. So we are talking. Each one of those organizations obviously have their piece of the pie, but yeah, definitely collaboration in the same room.
All right, thanks. Thanks for that question. Next question. Right here in the front. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Talking to me.
Could you repeat the question again, please? Because my counterparts didn't hear it as well.
Absolutely. So, no, you know what? Talking about the cloud. Right? I'd like to hear more about what the Army's overall strategy is for, at what echelon, what type of cloud, and specifically how we're going to leverage the cloud effectively. But as we heard from Lieutenant General Gervais this morning, in a future conflict, we're going to be under sustained electronic cyber attack, potentially on worldwide strategic communications.
Yeah, appreciate the question. So I think the way Jay kind of framed everything when he talked certainly covers a lot. There's synergies between what we do. From within our portfolio, from a cloud perspective, is really looking at how we take those enterprise capabilities and put them in the cloud that enable that transition between the tactical environment to get data up through the strategic side and back down for them to make decisions right away, right? And so you're going to find where there's going to be an instance of a strategic cloud and probably an instance of a tactical environment, right? Most of your tactical environments are likely not going to be connected to the network, so it'll be in their own private environment that they'll be able to communicate on some kind of a coalition network or things like that. And so within that construct, we really see ourselves in how we enable that communication, that connection, as far as identities across that environment to be able to communicate up and down, both strategic and tactical. I'll pass, if you don't mind, to Jay to kind of cover the network side of that.
Yeah, so again, my personal opinion based on where I sit, the Army's still struggling with that, to be honest. Because it's not about where the hardware sits, it's about what the software does and for whom and where they pull the information. And so whether it's something like Gabriel Nimbus, whether it's something enabled by ICAM, whether it's something that we identify as critical to that tactical formation, their stacks are called TSI. And so the Army is right now, and we're going to do it at the end of this week, we're figuring out, we're helping, and the acquisition guys are the go fetch guys. We're not the strategy guys, but we help inform what might be the appropriate risk posture of the Army. And what data lies where and where the applications lie is something that we're still talking about from a risk posture standpoint. And we're considering things like data sovereignty. We're considering things like what services does the tactical formation need to pull? What enterprise apps should not be off-premmed to CONUS data centers run by commercial cloud service providers? And the Army hasn't landed there yet. And until the Army lands there and says this data will remain here based on a cost-benefit analysis or a risk decision, then we won't know what and how much it's going to cost to offshore to the cloud, not offshore, but off-prem to the cloud, what the on-prem requirements must be, and what classification levels they need to be. On the enterprise side, we're still talking about that. You hear about get to the cloud now, but simultaneously you hear build the Army cloud. And so there's only so much money and so much store and compute that's going to go around, even though by cloud you can expand infinitely. And there's a lot of certifications that go into validating from DISA this is an appropriate data center to house the Army data. And so it's a long answer to say we don't know, but there are active conversations at very high levels of the Army to inform where we should go in a cost-informed, risk-informed posture. Anything else, Sergio? Okay.
All right, next question. I think we have one second row there. Go ahead.
So, thank you all for imparting your wisdom this morning. This is awesome. Is it working better now? Okay. As companies form alliances to chase some of these big projects that you have, the contract vehicles matter because some companies are primes on one and not the other. And if you could shed some light on where you might be heading with the SIPRNet redesign, I think that'd be very helpful to a lot of folks in this room.
You said SIPR redesign?
Yes.
Oh, okay, so that runs on hardware, so that would be me, right? Okay.
I was looking at you, sir.
Oh, okay, thanks. I have bad eyes and ears. I'm sorry. Hey, so we have a couple sources saw it. We have a couple RFIs out there. What I understand how tenuous it is with industry about who should lead, who should follow to maximize opportunities. What I would just say is just keep the communications open. There's a lot of opportunities for us out there, and given where we are in our geopolitical environment, given where we are in our fiscal environment, time and schedule to get to a contract award is one of our #1 concerns. And so we won't go to a contract vehicle that doesn't have a critical mass of the right vendors that will enable the best solutions at the best price. We just won't do that because it would be short-sighted. And we will always maximize and optimize competition just to get the best of breed and the best ideas out of everybody. We haven't decided on where we're going to land on any of our high dollar or large ticket items right now, aside from the contracting center that can get us there the fastest and provide us the best value is where we're going to go. But what I would recommend is if you see something on Fed Biz Ops, go ahead and let us know that you're available for that competition, and I think it would really best inform where we can go. Again, another long answer to say, I don't know.
Thanks, Jay. I think we have a question, top left corner there. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you very much. And thank you guys very much for taking the time to talk with us. This is actually extremely helpful to understand what your goals are. I noticed, and this might be mostly towards Colonel Taylor, but perhaps all of you'd like to weigh in, there was mention on one of your slides about deploying patches, specifically to warfighters in theater. I know that this has been a challenge for many years, and it's becoming more and more critical as we get closer to conflict with near-peer adversaries. My question is, where are we having success deploying patches to warfighters in theater, and how are we doing it?
Did you say deploying patches, software patches? So right now, a lot of our, well, the first one, I guess the honest answer, right? I don't have a good answer for that question. A lot of the capabilities that we field are, or most of them are on the enterprise side of the network, and we do a lot of that through the Forge. Sometimes our deployment system for some of our patches on our higher networks are a little bit more difficult. So I guess it's an analogy, but we have what we call micro armories, where it's a small hard drive, and we basically, if all else fails, whether it's on the unclassed networks or the classified networks, we will send that micro armory out there to do that upload. But as far as patching Army-wide in theater, my PM shop is not personally doing a lot of that. Do you guys have anything to add to that?
We are an enabling function of the tactical network. So we're on real property, and it doesn't apply to us.
Yeah, so I'll just kind of weigh in a bit. So, I think personally that really, we should probably check in with our NetCom teammates and our cyber teammates on how we do that. I know, previous years past, we had talked about installation as a docking station, things like that. How do you patch and deploy, the stacks when they go forward? That has always been a challenge, but I think definitely we need to circle back with them and figure out how we're doing that on the network. Okay. Yeah.
All right. I think we got one. Okay, go ahead.
Scott Towsley with IT Cadre. I'm curious about, for each of you three, what risk or two keeps you most up at night, worries you the most right now?
It's a good question.
I'll try to keep it short, but I think probably one of the things that keeps me up at night is how identity, credentialing, and access management is going to converge across the enterprise. And at what point does that become a friction point with competing priorities in the Army, and really nailing down how we do one or the other, or synergize between the different capabilities that exist within the Army and how we do identity, access, credentialing, and management. Those are probably one of the things that, for me, within our program that we struggle with, and making sure that we're delivering what we need for the Army, and DoD for that matter.
Mine's kind of a polarity. My number one concern is associated with our PM shop's ability to identify, adapt, and field those novel technologies on the enterprise network that can keep pace with our near peer or our peer adversaries. And so you hear a lot of, again, fancy buzzwords, AI, ML, data fabric, blah, 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 blah. But you got to pick somebody to buy it and field it. And so I am concerned about our ability, whether it be our workforce's ability to expand what they do, whether it be the bureaucracy of the building, to see how wide open our requirement documents are, our funding lines, and then fund them, and our ability to field them in a meaningful manner. Break. I said it's a polarity because that's on one end of the spectrum. On this end of the spectrum, the other thing that keeps me up at night is because of how the Army has funded our programs, we have a serious obsolescence issue. And so those are kind of different ends of the same spectrum, but both critically and viably important, because all the fancy buzzwords over here that we would field under a unified network that would enable umptafrats and jiggity watts won't work on 20-year-old network equipment. And so there's a sweet spot there. And so I'm just not sure where it is, but the viability of a program office to modernize, build, test, and field, but then also be the lifecycle manager that can ensure the efficacy of the network, those two things are what keep me up at night, and those are both very hard for us to attack.
Good question. Sometimes whenever you have to verbalize it, you think a little bit more deeply, and then it's not, oftentimes those fears and risks aren't verbalized. But I would say from a programmatic standpoint, risk management framework and getting an ATO is a minute by minute, hour by hour headache almost every day of trying to get there and trying to get a solution that you developed on the network. Very important process to get through, but we haven't yet cracked the nut, but we're trying to get there. The other one, the name of the PM shop, Defensive Cyber Operations. Defense is the operative term there, and on offense, you all have heard it before. You only got to be run right once. On the defense, you need to be right all the time, and we know that there's infiltrations in there. Then we're not catching them all and not catching them fast enough. So our ability to use the buzzwords, the machine learning, the artificial intelligence, automated response, move that cybersecurity, defensive, cyber Venn diagram closer together so we can truly get after it and keep our networks as clean as possible. So you can snuggle, as Jay was saying earlier. So, good question.
Yes, very good question. Thanks for asking. Hope that helps. Thought we had another question up in this area. Go ahead, sir.
There we go. Dave Chaput from VAE. First of all, thank you all, gentlemen. This has been very informative and a lot of fun. The question I've got is, as JRSS sunsets through sometime in 2027, where are the Army's plans in moving in that direction, moving to a zero trust environment, et cetera?
We good? Okay. JRSS in its current form, hardware, right? Software-enabled hardware, me. So I'll speak to, I think, where I think the Army is going. The Army recognizes, because of obsolescence, that JRSS will sunset in 27. What does JRSS next look like is something that we're still struggling with. Again, back to the cloud discussion. So there's a couple options that we would anticipate would be viable in 27. One is rip and replace JRSS with software-enabled hardware, all the firewalls, all the security suites, et cetera, that would get to part of a zero trust environment coupled with policy and SD-WAN and all these other things like that. And so that's an option. The other option is pick a cloud. Again, cloud is just somebody else's computer, to quote Bob Carroll. And pick a cloud and virtualize, Sergio, make all the ones and zeros run on common hardware. That's another option. Either way, what COA you pick is going to determine who fields it and what type of funds you put it in and what line Congress appropriates the dollars to. We've realized with our NetCom partners, NetCom and our PM shops are completely intertwined. Like, we are one entity, because fielders and modernizers, O&Mers, you can't separate us two. And so we're talking every day with our NetCom partners about what's the right solution for the Army. And so we should have that nailed down, at least in concept, probably in the next 6 to 9 months, so that we can then compete in the 26 budget cycle, 25 and 26 budget cycles for whatever that would look like. What I would say, if I were king for a day, I would say my current requirements don't constrain me from fielding it today, and the funds that we have coming in from Congress are flexible enough based on the words we've written to them to enable us to field it if it's a hardware-centric solution. And so, but again, the O&M community and our cyber are the ones that have to defend the network with those suites. And we've regionalized the network to those for efficiency of O&M. Again, another long way to say, I don't know, but we're figuring it out. And we hope to have it figured out in the next 12 months. Doesn't mean you'll hear about it in 12 months, but we'll at least know where we're going, I think.
I think we have a question right here. Go ahead, ma'am.
Good morning, and thank you guys so much for coming. This question's geared more towards Colonel Taylor, but sort of ties in with what Colonel Shaw was discussing around buying and fielding new technology. So I really commend you on your new Agile acquisition. Is it DCO's intent to allow other commands or other organizations within EIS to utilize some of those OTAs and to come to you guys for cyber tools and things of the like? Or is it just, a model that you'd like other commands to, replicate and kind of create their own proprietary OTAs?
No, the Cobra OTA, there's other organizations within the Army that can come and use it. There is a contracting bandwidth on how many actions you can get through there. There's the consortium side, but then the government side to get those on contract. So that is those government resources are the only thing I guess would be the limiting factor on that bandwidth. But yeah, the Cobra OTA it can definitely be used, and I know there are some partners that will be using that more so in the coming fiscal year. I'd be happy to talk about it more after.
Any more questions? Right up.
Colonel Taylor, Rick McVinigan's comm over here, sir. Gabriel Nimbus at any given time has only a few thousand users. When you talk about expansion, the industry obviously right now is interested to learn more. But how do you grow the user base within the regular Army? Beyond INSCOM, FORCECOM, and the Special Operations units?
I'd have to say a little ancillary to growing the user base, and as you know, I'm the acquisition arm to that. But right now, Gabriel Nimbus is primarily used for that DCO capability. I do believe that material solution will be used for other information operations capabilities moving forward, which will include other MOSs and other users. But those, we're still not there yet. I know our cyber has a Gabriel Nimbus University that they use to train new users. But right now, localized to DCO, but I see that mission set growing, and as the mission set grows, there will be more users. I know that doesn't get after exactly your question, but I know some of our cyber teammates are here in green suits that would be happy to talk about that down in front here. So.
All right, thanks, Mark. We got one right here in the front.
Hi, Molly Pearson. This question is for really Colonel Taylor. And sir, as you know, there's multiple data management platforms in the Army, and there's been discussion about streamlining and consolidating perhaps. Do you see it possible for big data platform to merge in with Vantage or Idvana or any of those? And can you talk at all about where that could potentially go?
I will preface this, but this is just my opinion. And there are a lot more discussions in the future to go in that area. But specifically Vantage and Gabriel Nimbus, I don't see in the near term. They tackle two different mission sets and operate a little bit differently. Right now, I think there's mission space for both of them to operate. Obviously, we're all stewards of taxpayer dollars, so as we look into the future, we'll reassess that moving forward. But my opinion, I don't see that in the near term.
Be quick, be quick.
Thank you. The question is primarily for Sergio. John Toma, Palantir. Definitely picked up on your concerns about ICAM and convergence. Does that include tactical ICAM in addition to enterprise? And can you tell us or talk to us about some of the things that we might be thinking about doing to help you solve the issue about gaining the convergence?
Yeah, appreciate the question. So definitely it's a collaborative effort, right, between our team and C3T. And so part of the challenge that we're working right now is making sure that we identify exactly what the requirements are that we need to ingest into the Army ICAM Enterprise solution so that we could service identities that exist on the Army identity environment, the directory, and push those identities and attributes down to the tactical level, while at the same time allowing the C3T environment on the tactical side to push up non-person entities for us to be able to have a coalesce identity environment to be able to communicate across the spectrum, whether they're non-person entities, person entities, and being able to do that. What we really have to figure out and where we think we're going to need help in is what's the right mix for that? Is it a one and all-inclusive directory? Is a combination of both? And then how do we service the tactical side when they're not connected to the network, right? That's the other challenge. And then what's the right mix of how we get that data once they make changes on their end and they refresh up at the strategic side. So we'd be, willing to hear some ideas from industry on how we can approach that and get thoughts on how you operate within a disconnected environment, as well as on the connected and bridging the two together. Okay.
All right, thanks, Serge. And I think that's a wrap. I've got 12 o'clock on the dot. Hey, thank you all for attending. Thank you to the panelists. Great questions.
All right, one second. Lee and panel team, Sergio, Jay, and Mark, want to thank you for taking time to join us today and the insightful remarks that we've had here. Again, AFCEA is going to make a donation to the Fort Gordon Historical Museum Society. And this concludes today's PEO sessions that are here in the Georgia Cyber Center. I'm going to ask that you join us back over at the Marriott. They've begun to have lunch over there on the Reynolds Street lobby. Lunch will be served until 1:30. The final keynote for today is in the Oglethorpe Ballroom, and that'll be with the joint PEO panel that will be moderated by Mike Madsen, Deputy Director for Defense Innovation. I ask that you consult your show guide or your conference app for details of the rest of the program. And we thank you all for coming today. We'll see you later on.
Thanks for your help. I was going to elbow you. My hands are kind of... It's okay. Yeah, thank you. It's an extra water if you want one. But, and don't forget to turn in your badge. Okay, you do have to turn that back. So I don't... Nothing outside of the... What's it say?
you.